I'm pregnant, David.
What did you just said?
We are going to be a family, David.
You're pregnant. Don't put that on me. I'm not ready for this, and get rid of it or we are done. They say every life is precious, a gift to be cherished. But what happens when the world treats someone like they're worthless? What happens when the man who promised a woman forever, the man who swore he would build a world for her, leaves her with nothing but a child in her belly and the cold pavement as her bed? Have you ever seen someone so alone, so completely abandoned, that they seem to carry the weight of the world's cruelty on their shoulders? This was Amara's reality. A pregnant beggar, an outcast, a ghost on the streets of a city that had forgotten how to care, a city that was too busy to notice one more broken heart. But what if salvation came in the most unexpected way possible? What if a man who had everything, a man who lived in a world she could only dream of, offered it all to a woman who had nothing? Would you believe such a thing could happen? She didn't either. At first, the rain began to lessen, and with a deep, shuddering breath, Amara used the wall to push herself up. Every movement was an effort. She made her way out of the alley and onto the bustling morning street. For the people rushing to work, it was just another Tuesday. For Amara, it was another day of survival. She found her usual spot near a busy intersection and sat on the damp concrete, holding out a stained, empty paper cup. The morning rush began, a river of faces streaming past. Most didn't even look down, adjusting their paths to give her a wide berth, as if her poverty might be contagious. A man in a sharp suit glanced at her, his lip curling in disgust before he quickened his pace. Amara kept her gaze fixed on the ground, watching the endless parade of shoes. Her stomach growled again, a low, mournful rumble. She saw a young couple approaching, holding hands and laughing. The sight was a dagger to her heart, and the world around her faded away as she was pulled back into a memory. It was 6 months ago, in their small, clean apartment. Amara was setting the table, her heart practically vibrating with excitement. "It's a special occasion," she told David, taking his hands. "The most special. David, we're going to be a family." She looked at him, her face a perfect portrait of hope, expecting him to lift her up in celebration. Instead, his smile vanished. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice suddenly cold. Her own smile faltered. "I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." The silence was suffocating. He stared at her, his eyes distant and calculating. "No," he said, pulling his hands away. "You're pregnant. Don't put that on me." Amara was stunned. "David, what are you talking about? This is what we wanted." He let out a short, cruel laugh. "This is what you wanted, a baby? Now? I can't be tied down with that. It's not my problem." Tears filled her eyes. "Not your problem. This is our child." He grabbed his jacket, his movements sharp and final. "Look, do whatever you want. Get rid of it. Or don't. I don't care. But my life is going one way, and it doesn't include this. We're done." He walked out without a backward glance, and the sound of the door closing shattered her world into a million pieces. The memory was as sharp and painful as a fresh wound. A single tear traced a path through the grime on her cheek as she sat on the pavement. She instinctively clutched her belly in a fierce, protective gesture. "No," she whispered to herself, so quietly the sound was lost in the city's noise. "Never." The day wore on. A few people dropped coins into her cup. The clinking sound was both a relief and a humiliation. An older woman with kind eyes pressed a small, soft bread roll into her hand, murmuring, "God bless you, child." Amara held the bread like a treasure, forcing herself to save it. As evening approached, she collected her meager earnings and limped towards a small park, finding a secluded bench. This was her dining room, her sanctuary. She ate the bread roll slowly, savoring every single bite. Then, she rested her hands on her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of movement from within. "Hello in there," she whispered to her unborn child. "Are you hungry?" I'm so sorry, this is all I have for you today. But you listen to me, little one. Your mother is a fighter. This world, this cold, hard place, it does not get to decide our story. I will not let it break us. I promise you, I will find a way out of this. You will have a life, a real life. You will be warm, and you will be safe, and you will be loved. I promise. Amara's journey is just beginning, and it's a powerful reminder of the struggles many face in silence. If you believe in the power of second chances, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Grandora Stories so you don't miss what happens next. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely shocked you? The next day began much like the last. The sun climbed in the sky, casting sharp lines across the pavement where Amara sat. The city moved around her, a blur of motion and noise, each person wrapped in their own world, their own concerns. She had become part of the background, a stationary figure in a world that never stopped moving. But then, something changed. A vehicle, long and black and impossibly clean, detached itself from the chaotic flow of traffic. It didn't just pull over, it seemed to glide to the curb with a profound silence that cut through the city's drone. The car was from another universe. Its polished surface reflected the grubby storefronts and hurried pedestrians, distorting them into a strange, warped version of reality. People on the sidewalk slowed their pace, their curiosity piqued. A hush fell over the immediate area as a chauffeur in a crisp grey uniform stepped out and opened the rear passenger door. A man emerged, stepping onto the pavement with a quiet confidence. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit that seemed to absorb the light around it. He didn't look like he belonged on this street, among the cracked sidewalks and peeling paint. For a long moment, he simply stood by the open door, his gaze sweeping over the scene until it settled on Amara. His expression was unreadable, a calm mask that offered no hint of his intentions, creating a bubble of intense mystery around him. Amara watched him, her body tensing. She had seen men like this before, but only in magazines or from a great distance. They were the kind of men who owned the buildings she slept in front of. She braced herself, expecting him to complain to his driver, to have her removed for being an eyesore. Instead, he began to walk towards her, his expensive leather shoes making soft, deliberate sounds on the concrete. The small crowd of onlookers held its breath. He stopped a few feet in front of her, casting a long shadow over her small space. He looked down, his eyes meeting hers directly. There was no pity in his gaze, no disgust. There was only a quiet, focused attention. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice calm and even. "I have a proposition for you." Amara stared, bewildered. She thought she must have misheard him over the city noise. A what?" she stammered. The man knelt, bringing himself closer to her level, an act so unexpected it stunned her into silence. "My name is Cale," he said softly, as if sharing a secret. "And I would like to ask you to marry me." The words hung in the air, so absurd, so utterly disconnected from her reality, that Amara's first reaction was a short, bitter laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Marry you?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Is this a joke? Are your friends over there filming this? Did you lose a bet?" Her mind raced, searching for a logical explanation, but there was none. This had to be a trick, a new and inventive form of cruelty designed for the amusement of the rich. "I understand why you would think that," Cale said, his voice unwavering. "I assure you, this is not a joke. I am completely serious." "Why?" Amara asked, the word escaping her lips like a puff of air. "Why me? Look at me. I'm a beggar. I'm pregnant. I have nothing." She gestured to her worn clothes, her empty cup, her life laid bare on the dirty pavement. "What could you possibly want from me?" "I want to offer you a home," he stated simply. "A safe place for you and your child. I can provide for you. You will never be cold or hungry again. You will have everything you need." He paused, letting the words sink in. "In return, I ask that you become my wife. A marriage in name, a partnership. It is a straightforward arrangement." Amara searched his face, looking for the lie, the hidden angle, the telltale sign of deceit. She found nothing but a strange, unnerving sincerity. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and a wild, terrifying flicker of hope. Hope was a dangerous thing. It was the thing that had broken her before. She thought of David's easy promises, of the future he had painted and then burned to the ground. She couldn't go through that again. "I don't know you," she whispered. "Mum," whispered, shaking her head. "People don't just do this. There's always a reason, there's always a price." "The price is your acceptance," Kyle replied gently. "That is all. I am not asking for your trust right now, because I know I have not earned it. I am only asking you to take a chance, a leap of faith." He fell silent, allowing her the space to think. He didn't pressure her or rush her. He simply waited, his patient gaze never leaving her face. For Amara, it was an impossible choice. Behind her was the life she knew, the constant hunger, the shame, the cold, the fear. It was a miserable existence, but it was familiar. Before her was this man, offering an escape so complete it felt like a fantasy. It was a door to another world, but she was terrified of what might be waiting on the other side. Then she felt it, a gentle flutter from within her womb, a tiny, insistent kick. It was a reminder of her promise. You will be warm, and you will be safe. This wasn't just about her own fear or her own broken heart anymore. It was about the life she was carrying, a life that deserved more than a cold welcome into a harsh world. Slowly, after a silence that felt like it stretched for an eternity, she looked up from her stomach and met Cale's eyes. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally spilled over, tracing clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. With a trembling hand, a hand that hadn't been held in kindness for a very long time, she reached out. Cale took her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm, a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of her emotions. In that moment, with the eyes of the city upon her, Amara made a decision born not of logic or trust, but of pure, desperate hope for her child. She took the leap. The journey from the curb to the car was a blur for Amara. One moment she was on the cold ground, the next she was sinking into the softest leather she had ever felt. The door closed with a quiet, solid thud, sealing her off from the world she knew. The sounds of the city instantly vanished, replaced by a heavy, humming silence. As the limousine pulled away, she watched through the tinted window as her corner, her alley, her entire life grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. She sat perfectly still, her hands clutching the empty paper cup from her former life, a fragile link to a reality that already felt a lifetime away. Cale sat opposite her, not speaking, giving her the space she desperately needed to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in her existence. They drove for what felt like hours, leaving the dense, grey heart of the city behind for sprawling suburbs with manicured lawns and towering trees. Eventually, the car turned onto a private road and slowed before a set of immense wrought iron gates. The gates swung open silently, as if by magic, revealing a long, winding driveway flanked by gardens so perfectly arranged they didn't seem real. At the end of the drive stood not a house, but a mansion. It was a grand structure of pale stone and dark wood, with vast windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. It was beautiful, imposing, and utterly terrifying. The car came to a stop, and the chauffeur opened her door. Cale stepped out first, then turned and offered her his hand. She hesitated for a moment before taking it, her small, calloused hand almost disappearing in his. As she stepped out, a woman in a simple but elegant black dress, her grey hair tied in a neat bun, came down the front steps. "Welcome, madam," the woman said, her voice polite and professional. "My name is Mrs. Gable. I am the head of the household staff. We are here to assist you with anything you may require." Amara could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. The staff, a small line of men and women in crisp uniforms, stood respectfully behind Mrs. Gable. There was no judgment in their eyes, only a quiet deference that she found deeply unsettling. This was all for her. This welcome, this mansion, this new life. It felt like a dream she was about to wake up from. Cale had clearly given his instructions, and they were being followed to the letter. Mrs. Gable led her inside. The interior was even more overwhelming than the exterior. The ceiling soared 2 stories high. A crystal chandelier hung like a constellation of captured stars, and a grand staircase swept upwards into the unknown. The air smelled of lemon polish and fresh flowers. It was the cleanest place Amara had ever been in her life. Every surface shone. Every corner was perfect. The silence here was different from the silence in the car. It was a vast, echoing quiet that seemed to magnify her own ragged breathing. "If you will follow me," Mrs. Gable said, her voice gentle, "I will show you to your room. A bath has been drawn for you, and some clothes have been laid out." The room was larger than the entire apartment she had once shared with David. A huge bed with a mountain of pillows sat in the center, and French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. On the bed, a simple, soft-looking cotton dress was laid out next to delicate undergarments. In the adjoining bathroom, steam rose from a large clawfoot tub filled with shimmering water. When the door closed, leaving her alone, Amara finally let go of the paper cup. It fell to the thick, plush carpet with a soft thud. For a long moment, she just stood there, an island of rags in an ocean of wealth. Then, slowly, she began to undress, letting her damp, filthy clothes fall to the floor. The bath was more than just warm water, it was a baptism. As she sank into the fragrant heat, she felt months of grime, of shame, of street sweat and alley dampness begin to dissolve. She washed her hair, scrubbing away the dirt until the water ran grey. It was a slow, deliberate act of reclaiming herself. After drying off with a towel that felt like a cloud, she put on the new clothes. The fabric was soft against her clean skin, a sensation so foreign and so welcome it almost made her weep. She walked over to a large, ornate mirror on the wall and stopped. The woman staring back at her was a stranger. Her face was still thin, her eyes still held a deep sadness, but the layers of dirt were gone. Her hair, now clean, fell softly around her shoulders. For the first time in a very long time, she saw a flicker of the woman she used to be, the hopeful, smiling woman from before. It was a ghost of a memory, but it was there. Later that evening, there was a soft knock on her door. A woman entered, carrying a tray with a teapot and a single cup. She looked a little like Kael, with the same calm eyes, but hers held a warmth that was immediately apparent. "Hello," the woman said with a gentle smile. "I'm Alara, Kael's sister. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I thought you might like some chamomile tea. It's good for helping one to relax." Amara was instantly on guard. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Alara placed the tray on a small table. "My brother told me about your arrangement. I want you to know that you are welcome here, Amara. Truly." She looked at Amara's stomach with a soft expression. "We will make sure you and your little one are well taken care of." The genuine kindness in Alara's voice was more disorienting than anything else she had experienced that day. Cruelty, she understood. Indifference, she knew intimately. But this open, unprompted warmth felt like a trap. Her mind began to spin. Why are they so nice? What do they want from me? No one is this good without a reason. What is their game? That night, sleep would not come. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet. The silence of the mansion pressed in on her. Feeling like an intruder in her own life, she slipped out of her room and began to wander the darkened, cavernous halls. The moonlight streamed through the large windows, painting long rectangles of silver on the polished floors. She felt like a ghost, haunting a house that wasn't hers. As she passed a heavy oak door that was slightly ajar, she heard voices from within. It was Kael's study. She recognized Alara's soft tone, laced with concern. "Kael, are you certain about this?" Alara was saying. "It feels complicated. Is it truly fair to her, bringing her into all of this now?" Amara froze, pressing herself against the wall, her heart pounding. "It's the only way, Alara," Kael's voice replied, sounding weary, drained of the strength it held earlier. "You know my time is short. I want to do this one good thing. I have to." Time is short? The phrase echoed in Amara's mind. Before she could process it, She saw a sliver of movement through the crack in the door. She saw Cale, his back to her, leaning heavily on his desk. He opened a small bottle, shook 2 or 3 pills into his palm, and swallowed them with a glass of water. He closed his eyes, his shoulders slumping, the image of a man carrying an immense, invisible weight. Amara backed away from the door, her mind reeling. She hurried back to her room, her fortress of silk and velvet, and slid into the bed. But the comfort was gone. She was treated like a queen, given everything a person could desire, but she had never felt more like a prisoner of a beautiful, gilded cage, trapped in a mystery she was only just beginning to comprehend. The days that followed were a strange mix of comfort and confusion for Amara. She was treated with impeccable care. The staff attended to her needs with quiet efficiency. Mrs. Gable ensured she ate nutritious meals for the baby's health, and Alara often joined her for walks in the vast, sun-drenched gardens. On the surface, it was a peaceful existence. But beneath the calm, a current of anxiety pulled at Amara constantly. The overheard conversation, the image of Cale taking medication, the phrase, "My time is short." These things circled in her mind, refusing to let her settle. She lived in a beautiful house, but it was a house built on secrets, and she knew she couldn't find true peace until she understood its foundation. Her need for answers became a quiet obsession. She watched Cale whenever he was near. He was always kind, always composed, asking about her well-being and ensuring she was comfortable. But she started to notice things she hadn't before. A faint tremor in his hand when he thought no one was looking, a deep weariness in his eyes that his polite smiles couldn't quite hide, moments where he would pause, leaning against a wall as if to gather his strength. He was a man holding himself together with immense effort, and the performance was starting to show its cracks. One afternoon, knowing Cale and Alara had gone into the city for appointments, Amara found herself standing before the heavy oak door of his study. It was the one place in the mansion she had been implicitly taught to avoid. It was his private space, but it was also the place where she had overheard the conversation that haunted her. Driven by an impulse she could no longer fight, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was filled with the scent of old books and leather. Bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and a large mahogany desk sat before a tall window overlooking the gardens. It felt like the heart of the house and the heart of the mystery. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she felt a pull towards the desk. It was neat and organized, with stacks of papers and a closed laptop. Then she saw it. Tucked partially under a leather-bound blotter was a thick, cream-colored envelope with the logo of a prestigious city hospital embossed in the corner. His name was typed neatly on the front, Mr. Calen Thorne. Her heart began to beat a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She knew she shouldn't. It was an invasion of his privacy, a violation of the fragile truce between them. But the need to know, to finally understand the truth of her situation, was too strong. With trembling fingers, she slid the documents from the envelope. The papers were filled with medical terminology she didn't understand, but she recognized enough. Words like inoperable, palliative, and prognosis jumped out at her. She scanned the pages, her eyes searching for something clear, something undeniable. And then she found it, on the final page, in a summary written in plain language by his physician. A single, devastating sentence that made the world tilt on its axis. Prognosis remains poor, with an estimated life expectancy of 6 to 9 months. The air left her lungs in a rush. She sank into the large leather chair behind the desk, the papers falling from her numb fingers onto the blotter. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. The strange proposal, the urgency, the kindness that asked for nothing in return, the conversation about his time being short, the pills. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a game. It was a transaction, but not the kind she had feared. He was buying himself a legacy. He was buying himself a family for the end of his life. He was dying. The discovery was a gut-wrenching blow. She felt a wave of emotions so powerful it left her dizzy. Shock, sadness, and a profound, aching pity for this man who had everything and nothing at all. But strangest of all, she felt a pang of betrayal, not because he had lied, but because he hadn't trusted her with the truth. She was still sitting there, staring into space, when he returned. He walked into the study and stopped short when he saw her in his chair, the medical report spread out on the desk between them. The mask of calm composure he wore so well finally fell away, replaced by a look of deep resignation and sorrow. The silence in the room was thick with unspoken words. Amara was the first to break it. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady, devoid of anger. It was filled with a heartbreaking understanding that went far beyond their short acquaintance. "You're dying, aren't you?" she asked softly. The question, so direct and gentle, seemed to break something in him. The tension left his shoulders and he let out a long, slow breath he seemed to have been holding for months. He nodded, unable to speak, and sank into the chair opposite his desk. The walls that had stood between them, the invisible barriers of wealth, class, and secrets, crumbled into dust in that moment. "Yes," he finally said, his voice raspy with emotion. "I am." He confessed everything then, the words pouring out of him in a quiet, steady stream. He told her he had first noticed her months ago, before she was even showing. He'd seen her sitting on a bench in the park during his lunch breaks, reading a book, her face full of life. He said he admired her spirit, the light in her eyes. Then one day, she was gone. When he saw her again weeks later on the street corner, pregnant and broken, it had affected him deeply. Around the same time, he had received his diagnosis. The convergence of his own impending end and her visible despair had prompted him to act. "It wasn't pity, Amara," he explained, his voice earnest. "I swear to you, I looked at my life, all this," he gestured around the opulent room, "and it felt so empty. I was facing the end with nothing but money and assets to my name. I wanted to do something meaningful. When I saw you, I saw that same spirit I'd admired, still there, fighting to survive under impossible circumstances. I didn't want to save you. I wanted to spend the time I have left with someone I genuinely admired. I wanted my last act to be one of creation, not acquisition. To give a child a future, to give you a future." As she listened, Amara's perspective shifted completely. She wasn't a pawn in a rich man's game. She was his final, most important project. A strange and beautiful tenderness bloomed in her chest, replacing the fear and suspicion. From that day on, everything changed. The arrangement became a partnership. The mansion, once a gilded cage, started to feel like a home. Their evenings were no longer spent in separate rooms, but together in the library, talking. She told him about her dreams of being a teacher, about the books she loved, about the simple life she had once craved. He told her about his travels, about the pressures of his family's empire, about his regret for not living a simpler life sooner. They laughed at silly jokes. They shared quiet moments of contemplation. He would place a gentle hand on her stomach, a look of wonder on his face as he felt the baby kick. Amara found herself falling in love, not with the billionaire, not with the mansion or the money, but with Cale, the kind, thoughtful, and tragically mortal man who showed her more respect and tenderness in a few weeks than David had in 2 years. She was no longer just the recipient of his kindness. She became his confidant, his friend, and his partner in facing the inevitable. She was there to help him live out his final days, just as he was there to give her and her child a new beginning. What an incredible turn of events. Amara thought she was being used, only to find a heartbreaking and beautiful truth. What would you do in her situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button if this story is touching your heart. The weeks turned into a month, then 2. A quiet, domestic rhythm settled over the mansion. Amara's pregnancy progressed, her belly growing round and full, and with it, her confidence blossomed. The fear and uncertainty that had clouded her features were replaced by a serene strength. Her relationship with Cale deepened into a bond of profound affection and mutual respect. They were a true family, building a lifetime of connection into a handful of precious months. But the peaceful world they had built was fragile. and a shadow from Amara's past was about to fall across it. News travels fast in a city, especially when it involves the wealthy. Whispers of the mysterious billionaire who had taken in a pregnant woman from the streets had circulated, morphing into a modern-day fairy tale for gossip columns. And eventually, those whispers reached the ears of David. He appeared one afternoon, unannounced, at the grand front gates. He had cleaned himself up, wearing his best clothes and a practiced, charming smile. When the staff informed Amara she had a visitor claiming to be an old friend, she felt a cold knot of dread form in her stomach. She agreed to see him, but not in the main house. She met him in the formal gardens, on neutral ground, with the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the manicured lawns. The contrast between the two men in her life was stark and immediate. Where Cale was quiet, thoughtful, and sincere, David was slick and loud, his charm feeling oily and manufactured. He looked around at the opulent surroundings with wide, greedy eyes, the smile on his face failing to mask the avarice within. "Amara, look at you," he began, his voice oozing a false warmth. He spread his arms as if to hug her, but she remained still, forcing him to let them fall awkwardly to his sides. "I've been so worried. I heard what happened, that you fell on hard times. If I'd known, I would have come for you sooner. You should have called me." The hypocrisy of his words was breathtaking. Amara looked at him, not with the heartbroken eyes of the woman he had abandoned, but with the clear, steady gaze of the woman she had become. "You told me to get rid of our child and that we were done," she stated calmly, her voice even. "You made your position very clear, David." He had the grace to look momentarily flustered before his slick demeanor returned. "I wasn't myself that day," he said, trying to sound remorseful. "I was scared. I'm just a man, Amara. I make mistakes, but I've thought about nothing else since. I've thought about you, about our baby." He took a step closer, his eyes fixed on her pregnant belly. "Our child deserves a real family, with its real father. This man, this stranger, what does he know about you? About us? We have history. We have a connection." He was trying to use their shared past as a key, hoping to unlock a door back into her life. A life that was now, he could clearly see, incredibly lucrative. He saw her not as a person he had wronged, but as a winning lottery ticket he had foolishly discarded and was now desperate to reclaim. But the woman he was speaking to was not the same one he had left crying in an empty apartment. That woman was gone, washed away in a bath of tears and reborn in the quiet kindness of a dying man. Bolstered by Cale's unwavering love and her own rediscovered self-worth, Amara felt no pain, only a distant pity for how small and transparent he was. She held up a hand, stopping him from taking another step. "No, David," she said, and the power in her voice made him freeze. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk back in here and pretend to care. Let me tell you what you know about us. You know how to lie. You know how to make promises you have no intention of keeping. And you know how to abandon a woman the moment she becomes an inconvenience to your life." She took a deep breath, her voice ringing with conviction through the quiet garden. "You talk about what our child deserves? Our child deserves better than a father who would suggest they be discarded. Our child deserves better than a father whose love is conditional on his own convenience. You are not that man. You are not a father. You are just a ghost, a reminder of a life I am glad to have left behind." David was stunned into silence, his charming facade crumbling to reveal the ugly greed beneath. "But all this," he stammered, gesturing wildly at the mansion. "You can't just throw me away. I'm the father. I have rights." "You have no rights here," Amara said, her voice now as cold and hard as steel. "You surrendered them the moment you walked out that door. The man in that house," she nodded towards the mansion, "has shown me more true love and honor in 2 months than you did in 2 years. He is more of a father to this child than you could ever be. You came here for money, David. Not for me, and not for this baby. And you will get nothing. Now, I want you to leave." She turned her back on him, a final dismissive act, and began to walk back towards the house, not once looking back. She left him standing there, utterly defeated, a small, shameless man dwarfed by the scale of a world he could not enter and a woman he no longer knew. It was her moment of absolute triumph, a powerful declaration of her own worth, and a final closing of a painful chapter in her life. Yes, Amara, she took her power back. If you loved seeing her stand up to David, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. Let's celebrate strong characters like Amara. After the confrontation with David, a profound peace settled over the mansion. But it was a peace tinged with the sad awareness of borrowed time. The seasons began to turn, the vibrant greens of summer slowly giving way to the soft golds of autumn. As the leaves on the trees began to fall, so too did Cale's strength begin to fade. The decline was gradual at first, a little more time spent resting, walks in the garden that became shorter and shorter until they were replaced by long hours sitting on the balcony, simply watching the world go by. Amara watched this slow dimming of his light, not as a fearful observer, but as a devoted partner. Her care for him was a constant, gentle presence. It was in the way she read to him for hours from his favorite books of poetry, her voice a soft melody in the quiet room. It was in the way she learned to prepare the simple broths he was able to eat, her focus absolute. It was in the comfortable silences they shared, where she would simply hold his hand, her presence a reassurance that he was not alone. This was not a duty she was performing. It was an expression of the deep, genuine love that had grown between them. She was no longer the beggar he had saved. She was his wife in every way that mattered. His body grew weaker, but his mind remained sharp, and his concern was always for her and the child. He would watch her as she moved about the room, her belly a beautiful, proud sphere, and a look of immense peace would settle on his features. He had done it. He had created a future. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he called her to his bedside. His voice was a faint whisper, and she had to lean in close to hear him. "Amara," he said, his eyes searching hers. "We need to talk about what comes next." She tried to quiet him, to tell him to save his strength, but he insisted. "No, please, let me say this." He took her hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "I have left everything to you and the child. The lawyers have it all arranged. But the money is not the point, Amara. It is just a tool. My real legacy is you." Tears welled in her Amara's eyes as she listened. "Promise me," he continued, his voice earnest, "that you will not let this house become a monument to a sad story. Promise me you will fill it with laughter. Promise me you will live fully, that you will not hide from the world. And the foundation we spoke of, for women like you were, for mothers who have nowhere to turn, promise me you will build it. Turn my name into a symbol of hope." "I promise, Cale," she whispered, her tears falling freely onto their joined hands. "I promise. We will make you proud." "I am already proud," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. He placed his other hand on her belly. "And you, little one, be good to your mother. She is the strongest person I have ever known." Those were some of his last words. In the days that followed, he slipped further away, drifting in and out of consciousness. Amara never left his side. She slept in a chair by his bed, her hand always on his. She wanted the last thing he felt in this world to be her touch, a reminder of the love they had found against the relentless ticking of the clock. His passing came in the quiet, pre-dawn hours. It was not a struggle. He simply let go. One moment, his chest was rising and falling in a shallow rhythm, and the next, it was still. The room was silent, peaceful. Amara sat with him for a long time, her head resting on the bed beside their clasped hands, weeping not just for the man she had lost, but for the beautiful, fleeting time they had been given. It was an ending, but it was also the beginning of her promise. 2 years passed. The great mansion, once a symbol of overwhelming wealth and secrets, was now filled with the sounds of life. The halls that had once echoed with silence now rang with the happy babble of a small child. Amara had kept her promise. She had given birth to a healthy baby boy whom she named Kalen. She was no longer a resident of the house, but its heart. True to her word, she had poured her energy and the resources Kale had left her into creating the Kale Foundation for Displaced Women and Children. It became a powerful force for good in the city, a sanctuary that offered shelter, support, and second chances to countless women who found themselves in the same desperate position she had once been in. This story shows us that true wealth is not measured by the size of a bank account or the grandeur of a house. It is measured by the depth of one's kindness and the compassion one shows to others. One selfless act, born from a desire to create something meaningful in the face of an ending, did not just save one life. It created a legacy of love that now ripples through the lives of many, a testament to a love that was found against all odds. The story closes on a bright, clear day. Amara, poised and confident, stands before a simple, elegant headstone on a grassy hill overlooking the city. By her side, holding her hand, is her young son, a small boy with his mother's determined eyes. Amara kneels down and helps the boy place a single, perfect white lily at the base of the stone. She smooths his hair and looks at the name carved into the marble. "Thank you, Kale," she whispers, her voice soft but clear. "You saved me, and now we're saving others just like you wanted." She stands, holding her son's hand tightly, and together they look out at the sprawling city below, their faces turned towards a future filled with hope and purpose. Kale's love transformed Amara's life and is now transforming the lives of many others. What was the biggest lesson you took from this story? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching Grandora Stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more tales that touch the soul.